Welcome to Stock Therapy with Penny Queen. Today I'm joined by Eric Appelman, Chief Revenue Officer of Aduro Cleantech. Welcome back, Eric.
Thank you.
All right, we have had a very exciting few months at Aduro since I last talked to you. So the first thing I want to ask you about is the NGP. How's that going? Where's your confidence with it?
Thank you for that question. And yes, this is exciting. Most of you will probably know that I am a chemical engineer by training, and it is amazing pleasure at the tail end of your career to come back a little bit to your old trade. As some of you might have seen, the NGP is there. It has arrived. The Eagle has landed. It is in our premises. It's absolutely amazing process. It fits. It has been a very successful introduction, and it is there in full glory. And I say full glory also because I tremendously love that we have been able to assemble a process essentially from Lego blocks that have been around for so many years. So in other words, we do not have complicated tailor-made reactors. We just use things that have been around, which helps us tremendously to keep it simple and also easy to multiply.
All right. Yeah, that's very exciting. I love the cost savings and time savings and being able to put that together. Good engineering on your behalf there at Aduro. When I saw the images and the video of it coming in, I guess I'm not sure what I imagined, but I was thrilled to see how it looks like it just slotted in there and you were ready to go. I guess that wasn't what I was thinking.
Felt like it fits like a glove. That was, of course, unintention. So we wanted to fit it in there. We designed a wonderfully compact thing. And we could also do that. And then I'm coming back to those standard equipment because it is equipment for which the scaling rules have been known for decades. In other words, we do not really need to build a 10,000-ton pilot plant. And we can build it much smaller and still get all the information that we want because everybody knows perfectly well how you build those things bigger without running into trouble. So tremendously proud to see that. And this is very, very exciting indeed.
All right, Eric, let's talk about the letter of intent. I was very excited to see that this morning. I mean, it tells me that the company is very confident right there and that you want to go quickly to that full commercialization. So let's talk about why you picked the Netherlands.
Yeah, well, you are right. We are very confident and we scale because it comes really fast on the heels of the NGP. But as I said, the equipment in the NGP is chosen such that we actually can already draw the scaling line. By the way, for some parts, we have already done trials on a semi-industrial scale that is bigger than the NGP, and it all works well. Why would you go to the Netherlands? Well, in Northwest Europe in general, you do see very well-developed collection and sorting infrastructure. There's a lot of companies that do that. They're actually struggling a little bit, as you probably know, because the demand for mechanical recyclate is not so good, but you can buy good quality volumes today. The second thing that is important, we make a liquid product that has to go to a steam cracker, and not all steam crackers are designed. So most of the steam crackers in North America are so-called gas crackers. They take the condensables from shale gas, and they are not suitable for doing liquids. Now in Europe, we have a lot of old naphtha crackers. We have lost quite a few because they were too old to redo. But there's still some very competitive ones in Northwest Europe, so we could sell our product easily. And then the other thing is about regulation. And we have now, since a year in Europe, the PPWR, where the European Union has accepted that chemical recycling is another pathway parallel to mechanical. That's good. Where it allows the mass balance principle, so you can count the carbons that you have recycled and then allocate them to those streams that you would like to call recycled. And it is also going to prescribe a minimum recycled content, and that is going to create market. Now, our plant is not there yet, and by the time it is complete and fully scaled, we suspect that those three have all conspired, been brought together, and create very favorable circumstances indeed.
All right. And a few other things that I want to say about this site is that it already has electrical, it already has it. There's so
Yeah.
much infrastructure already there that is a major time savings, but also
Absolutely.
it
Yeah.
was only 2 million euro.
Yeah, well, that is the benefit, because it's all there and it is only worth something for somebody that has intentions like ours, because it is originally the site that was designed for something similar to what we do. So you probably have some, well, you buy a second-hand, a vintage site, whatever you call, which is it's fashionable to call it. And so that works, but it is not only the money, it is time. We will not have to allocate resources to get a building erected, to finding a piece of land, to argue for an electricity connection, which actually is a problem in the Netherlands, but the site that we're looking at is fully equipped to have natural gas, everything else, even some useful equipment there. That is going to take away a lot of time, effort, but also don't forget risk, because
Yeah.
building a building is not our core competence. So, and you might have a risk, it might be delayed. Well, that is all out of the window. That is all there. So it is managing the risk, it's managing the money, and I think, and managing the time. And I think all of that together is also can be translated in managing the means that have been entrusted to us by our investors. And we have to make sure that we spend it well and with minimal risk.
That that was one of the things that I saw with that price tag. And I mean, I figured that it had to be a really good fit too.
Yeah.
And that the price was probably a benefit of it being such a good fit. But
Yeah.
looking, and I know that Aduro actually has a really good cash position right now. I remember from the last quarter and then the raise.
Yeah.
You're sitting pretty, but I love that the company doesn't waste money. I just
Yeah,
love
yeah,
that as
because there will be plenty of things to spend it on,
yeah,
but do not start to squander it on day one. And be
yeah,
mean. That is normally good and fits good with the Dutch attitude. So that is all good.
perfect. Thank you. I've asked you this question before and you've answered it very clearly before, but I love asking you this question. Tell me how Aduro's technology is better.
Yeah. Now there's actually three legs where that stands on. And the first one is that we are able to deal with contaminated feedstocks. And I'm not talking about having lots of organics, but especially other polymers. A lot of films and flexibles, as they are used today, are definitely not mechanically recyclable, but they are also very difficult to chemically recycle because they contain other polymers. If you have a little cheese wrap, in 9 out of 10 cases, that is actually 2 layers of polyethylene, which is lovely, but in between there is a barrier layer of polyamide. And that polyamide is not particularly liked by alternative processes. Sometimes there is just leftovers, there's sleeves, there's multi-layers, and that is where we are good at. And if you have really nice and pure polyolefins, go for mechanical recycling. That is always the best. But it is, of course, precisely that leftover where you have some contaminants that is difficult. In many cases, we'll probably be able to even get paid for taking it off. Then we would still have to do some effort to maybe clean it and put it in the right shape, but of the plastic input that you would need for alternative process like pyrolysis. That's one. That's a really significant difference. The other one that I have been talking with you about before a lot is that the quality that we get out of it is such that you could send it without any after treatment to a steam cracker. Now, the steam cracker is the portal of the chemical industry. That is where you start. It is a huge machine. It is very picky, and it really requires a good degree of purity there. Many alternative chemical recycling routes do require extensive hydrotreatment because they just do make the wrong material. It needs correcting, and this costs you a lot of money. This is not strange to hear $400-500 per ton. And that is substantial if you realize that the normal fossil feedstock for a steam cracker costs you 700 already. So that's close, dangerously close. But the one thing that I would like to spend a bit of extra time with you, if you don't mind, is that in the past half year, we have done some extra study and we have discovered that by our very clever condition of catalysis, process conditions, and others, we are able to take these huge molecules that you have in polyethylene and squeeze them with very high selectivity, precisely in that steam crackable range. Now, that is, of course, the idea. We do like 80% of all the carbons, so 90% of all the carbons end up there. Now, that may sound interesting, but it becomes crucial if you realize that other processes do that a lot less subtle, because either they overshoot and they make a lot of fuel gas, which you can only burn, or they leave a lot of so-called waxes, things that are still too big. So they lose either left or right 10 to 20% of good material. I actually heard a consultancy today that said, well, pyrolysis yield of crackable product is they estimated at 65%. We make 85%. That's a huge difference. And the rest typically ends up being burned. And you may be aware of the fuel exempt clause that the European Commission now has stipulated. It says that, yes, we now finally will recognize chemical recycling, hooray, and mass balance, hooray, but we will not allow you to count any carbons that end up as fuel. So you will only get a premium for that bit that you really put into new plastics. Now, there we have an enormous yield advantage, and that is going to help us. So 3 legs, a tolerance for a much cheaper and more abundant feedstock, a significant saving on the post-treatment, but also a much higher yield and a much higher fraction of stuff that is in the end also recycled. Those 3, people can make their sums. I have made some estimating. I'm not going to share it with you. That's why I believe that this is going to unlock the doors to integral recycling, where you take a little bit for mechanical, the easy bits, but where we are able to take a huge bite out of the leftovers, convert it with very good cost effectiveness, and result in a product that can actually survive in the world of fossil.
Right. I like the pyramid analogy where, you could take with mechanical recycling, you could probably take the cleanest bits off the top, right? Which
all means.
Great, yeah, great process for that. But the bulk of everything that's left, those mixed and contaminated, that's what we need the solution for. And I've done plenty of math on my own, and I end up with a whole lot of zeros, no matter how many ways I do it. And that's as a shareholder for me, when, especially when the market's wonky, that's the thing that I try and think, what am I holding in 2 years? What am I holding in 3 years? Yeah. And I almost don't even want to think about what I'm holding in 5. So that's just how I see Aduro in relation to everything else that's going on. But that leads me down the path of policy. Can you talk to me about what's shifting in Europe and globally?
Yeah, this is an important question. What we see in Europe, we have seen the PPWR, that is the plastic packaging waste regulation. And whereas Europe, until the beginning of 2025, was very much sort of held hostage by the belief that the only recycling that counts is mechanical recycling, the Commission has made a change. They have realized that probably you would end up between 20 and 30% of stuff that could be meaningfully recycled. And they said that's not enough. And there's actually also a pain point, because if all the cost of recycling has to be carried by 30% that makes a return, and you have to pay for all the rest to be burned or landfilled, that is not going to be a pretty picture. So they actually turned around and says, we are going to recognize chemical recycling. So you will also be able to get credits for every carbon that goes to chemical recycling back in materials. But as I said before, if something falls by the wayside and ends up being burned, like the light gases that you find, and also we make some of that, or the waxes, or both, that, well, maybe by refinery integration, which some of the alternative technologies do, then you are not going to be allowed to count those carbons in your mass balance. And that has actually led to some delayed investments, I believe. And the observer may have seen that in Europe, a couple of chemical recycling investment projects have been delayed or put on ice. And I believe it's precisely because of that, because it was relying on the assumption that every carbon that went in would be counted. And that is not going to be the case. So that is a very significant thing. The other half of the PPWR is that there is going to be a minimum recycled content. And that is super important, but that will create a market. And there is, there was a bit of haggling and bickering and everything else about it. And it has to be turned into national language. And we really pray that by 2030 it will be there. That may be for some, by the way, too late, especially people that are already sitting on expensive assets. Sometimes it's a blessing if you're even a little bit later to the market. But I think that is what you see, but that it will come. And to everybody that is sort of casting doubt, I say, well, one thing is for sure, the world does not want any plastic waste into the environment anymore. And I sometimes make a joke about my little country. We have no space for a landfill because it is always in somebody's backyard. And since half of the country is below sea level, we also do not want too much incineration. This is going to happen. Even in countries like the Philippines, you have EPR schemes where money has to be paid by the plastic marketeers to collect it and everything else. And that is actually an important thing. So regulation is coming worldwide. It will be different in different places, but it is coming because the people just don't want the plastic anymore. I'm actually not so happy with people that say, we should not be using plastic at all. It's a great material, but look after it properly. And that is going to come. So Europe has seen that. Canada is doing big strides as it comes to collecting and sorting and making sure that it doesn't end up in the environment. And sooner or later, it has to find an outlet. Of course, we are talking there as well, so that regulation is coming as well. So the regulatory environment, it's not going as fast as everybody wants, and I would like to see it going quicker. It's going to be ups and downs and hiccups and whatever else, but it is coming, and we better be prepared.
All right. I'm excited. It's a global problem, and I understand that legislation and policy takes shape in different forms and at different speeds around the world, but it is clearly moving forward in Europe. North America, it's moving forward, maybe more so in Canada than it is in the US right now, but it seems like an unstoppable march.
It is coming. Yeah.
I can't wait. So
in the last couple of weeks, I heard about Nigeria, about Mexico, about Australia, about the Philippines, all countries where we really take this serious. So it is coming. We don't want plastic in our backyard, isn't it? And we have to just do something about it, and that it will come. But we'll have to pay our bills. You cannot pay recycling with good intentions and do gooding. It has to be competitive. It has to be clean. It has to be efficient with labor, with carbon, with everything else. So that is what we are up to, and that's why we're here for.
All right. Well, I mean, it helps when you have high yields, so helps pay the bills. So
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Eric, is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
Now, as said, and people have heard me before, I'm now 2 years with Aduro. I made a very deliberate decision because I felt this was breaking the stranglehold of chemical recycling, and it's only getting more convincing. I want to say that I cannot, of course, explain it in full detail to people less familiar to this art, but it is there. It is making progress. We today had an all-employee day, and we are all together, all 25 or 30. We are not that big. But I could actually say what I had seen in the market from partners, how much progress we had made, especially in getting confirmation from very reputable partners that say, hey, we've looked at your stuff, it works. We've tried your stuff, it works. Cannot give all names here at this moment in time, but it has been so satisfactory to see that happening. And yeah, we're on the right track.
All right. I'm thrilled. Thank you for
Yeah.
taking the time this late at night.
Pleasure. Yeah.
Always great to hear from you and see there's just been so much progress. This is really great, especially for for me, remembering when this was pre-IPO and desktop, or I
Yeah.
say benchtop, as it were. And this is so great to see. So I'm thrilled to be along for the ride, and yeah, I'm excited. Thank you.
We'll talk again soon, and there will be more things to talk about. Thank you so much. Have a
Perfect. Thank
wonderful
you,
day,
Eric.
and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.